What is up, and welcome to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. Whether you're listening to me or watching me on YouTube, I appreciate you. And if you are watching me on YouTube, you know I'm excited today because I finally have some curtains up. So, in keeping with that spirit of positivity and excitement, I wanted to do like good sports news. Unfortunately, the sports world did not want to cooperate, so we do have to touch on some of these tough stories. However, I did want to kind of keep it light, so I'm going to deliver you bad news in a fun way in a new game that I'm calling Wheel of Unfortune. Yeah! Don't know if Unfortune is a word. I'm guessing it is. I say it is. So let's talk about how to play it. Okay, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice I'm looking just off camera at the glorious Wheel of Unfortune. If you're listening to the podcast, go check out the Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers YouTube channel because the wheel is actually on camera and it's incredible. Anyways, I have a ton of awful sports stories on the wheel. I'm going to give it a spin. Whichever one it lands on, that's the one I'll be doing a deep dive on today. Okay, real quick, before I spin the wheel, let me give you a quick rundown of some of the stories that are on the wheel. Okay, this first one, this is a big one. We've got the year-long suspension of Boston Celtics coach, former Charleston Logator Ime Udoka, as a result of a consensual affair with another Celtics employee. If you don't know by now, I'm contractually obligated to mention that I was a ball boy with the Logators. So this one really bummed me out because Ime was a pros pro when I dealt with him as a ball boy, and he's married to the iconic Nia Long. But it is what it is. We don't really have the full story on this one yet, so I'm kind of hoping the wheel doesn't land here, but let's keep it moving. Okay, so this next one could be something. We have Kyrie Irving. He posted a video of whack job conspiracy theorist Alex Jones from 2002 talking about Alex Jones tried to warn us and tweeted a long-winded tweet about how enforcing vaccines is one of the biggest violations of human rights in history. This isn't super exciting to me, though, because this is basically just what Kyrie does. Always fun to see how these self-proclaimed free thinkers just parrot dumb thoughts from other dumb people. So I guess we could talk about it, but it's just so incredibly stupid. All right, this one's heinous. This is Brett Favre stealing millions of dollars from the poorest people in the poorest state that we have in this country, Mississippi. This is the same state we were talking about whose capital city, Jackson, in the HBCU episode. They don't have drinkable water in the capital due to terrible infrastructure. So good thing Brett's using that money to line his own pockets. This one's particularly awful because of the widespread effects of this. And I'm actually wondering where Kyrie Irving would rank this in his biggest violations of human rights list. Also, it's incredibly stupid because at one point, Favre sent a text that said, quote, "If you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much about these stolen funds?" Now, it should go without saying, but if you have to send that text, you know whatever you're about to do is pretty messed up. You probably shouldn't do it. And even more importantly, you certainly shouldn't put it in writing in a text message. Now, what's fun, and not in a really ha-ha way, but this isn't Favre's first texting scandal. He actually sent unwanted dick pics and sex to a Jets employee when he played for them. He also has a history of being in misappropriation of funds scandals. So shout out to Brett for not really growing as a person or learning from his mistakes. Scammy Sosa is the only sports-related nickname I could come up with for him. This could be a good story to talk about. I might just turn this into a whole full-blown rant, so I don't know. We'll see what the wheel says. I'm going to go ahead and give the wheel a spin. And it looks like today we're talking about Robert Sarver. So this is good because I actually have a solution for this one. Okay, so a little bit of backstory for those of you who don't know. In November of 2021, ESPN's Baxter Holmes released a story about toxic workplace culture within the Phoenix Suns organization, specifically a number of incidents involving Suns owner Robert Sarver that were either sexist or racist. Holmes interviewed over 70 current and former employees from Sarver's 17 years as an owner of the Suns for the story, and the thoroughness of the story and the seriousness of the allegations prompted the NBA to launch an investigation almost immediately. Now, a couple of weeks ago, the NBA released its findings from that investigation. The findings confirmed a lot of what ESPN reported. Anytime you've been found to have said the N-word at least 5 times, and it might not be the worst thing you did, you know you were out here acting wild. So, some of the other things included in the 43-page report are, this is cool, so Sarver used language and engaged in conduct demeaning of female employees. Among other examples, he told a pregnant employee that she would be unable to do her job upon becoming a mother. He berated a female employee in front of others and then commented that women cry too much. He also arranged an all-female lunch so that female employees at Western Alliance Bank, where he was the CEO at the time, could explain to female Suns employees that this is just how Robert is. Now, Sarver also commented and made jokes frequently to employees in large and small settings about sex and sex-related anatomy, including making crude and otherwise inappropriate comments about the physical appearance and bodies of female employees and other women. On 4 occasions, Sarver engaged in workplace inappropriate physical conduct toward male employees. So good for Robert. He's out here being sexist towards men and women. That's equality. Over 50 current and former employees reported that Sarver frequently engaged in demeaning and harsh treatment of employees, including yelling and cursing at them, that on occasion constituted bullying under workplace standards. So he's not just racist and sexist, he's just a general overall asshole as well. So this report was kind of clear about that as well. They weren't really trying to make a judgment one way or the other about whether or not he was sexist or racist, but at the very least, he has a sophomoric sense of humor, doesn't think the rules apply to him, and seems to enjoy trying to make the people around him uncomfortable. And I'm not going to try to make any judgment about him either on his views of race or gender, other than to say it's a major problem that he's so, I guess, flippant is the word we'll call it, since I'm giving the benefit of the doubt as I recognize that he can afford better lawyers than I can, but that he's so flippant about topics like race and gender when he owns the Phoenix Suns, a majority black team in a league whose players are also mostly black, and the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury, which is a predominantly black woman team and a predominantly black woman league. Now, the league, as a result of this report, suspended him for a year and fined him $10 million. This seemed like an exceptionally light punishment to many, myself included. Sarver has since decided to sell both franchises, but many are curious about why he wasn't forced to sell by the league. Particularly since there is a precedent for this, since the NBA did force Donald Sterling to sell the Clippers in 2014 as kind of a lifetime achievement award for all the racist things he did, culminating in being caught on tape chastising his mistress for, quote, associating with black people. Now, I have a couple of reasons why I think Sterling was forced to sell, but Sarver wasn't, so let's dive into those real quick. First of all, Sterling was caught on tape saying this stuff. I imagine if there was a tape of what Sarver was doing, he would have been forced to sell as well. For whatever reason, hearing terrible shit seems to hit harder than just reading about it. Don't believe me? Donald Sterling, in addition to being awful at the actual operations part of owning a team, the Clippers were always terrible when he was the owner, had a lifetime of racial discrimination in his real estate business where being racist has widespread real-life repercussions, as well as sexual harassment claims years and years before being forced to sell. As a side note, be very careful naming your kids Donald. Another reason why Sterling was forced to sell but Sarver wasn't, timing. The Sterling tape dropped in the middle of the playoffs, and there were very real discussions between the Clippers and the Warriors of boycotting their game against each other in protest of Sterling. Meanwhile, the Sarver report, in what I'm sure is a complete coincidence, dropped in the middle of the offseason a couple weeks before training camp even starts. No NBA games to boycott, nothing like that. The Mercury had already been eliminated from the playoffs. The news cycle was mostly focused on the start of the NFL season, so people were still outraged, but all of these circumstances worked together to make it just a little bit less impactful. Now, I think the main reason why Sarver wasn't forced to sell by the league when Sterling was has to do with the other owners. Now, nothing I've read leads me to believe that Sarver is particularly well liked by his other owners. He, like Sterling, is bad at the actual operations part of owning a team, so he's not exactly raking it in for the league, and any success the Suns have had seems to be in spite of him and his cheapness in meddling, but I can't imagine the other owners want to set the bar here for forcing the sale of a team. Like I said, Sterling had a record of doing heinous shit. denying housing to minorities, discrimination, all this stuff. The Sarver stuff, while also heinous, seems to be more like normal rich white guy behavior, honestly. I can't imagine getting to billionaire status without doing that stuff if you're in this space, particularly like most professional sports franchise team owners. Perhaps it makes me cynical to think that way, but I would imagine there are plenty of other owners who have done something similar to what Sarver's being accused of doing, and they don't want to be forced to sell their teams because of it. And I want to be clear, too, that being forced to sell your sports franchise is a hilarious punishment. I mean, Sterling made $2 billion selling his team, and I'm begging someone to punish me for something in a way that allows me to walk away $2 billion richer. And I imagine Sarver is going to walk away with even more money than that, as Jeff Bezos, Bob Iger, and Larry Ellison are some of the names rumored to be interested in buying one or both franchises from him. However, the big question for me is, what do we do about owners? They're rarely questioned about their bad behavior until it gets to an absolutely wild point like this. They don't have to be particularly good at their job. They can put together a terrible team that has no chance of winning and drives away fans and still walk away with more money than they'll ever be able to spend. And there's just nothing we can do about it. And this isn't just an NBA problem. It's a whole professional sports in the United States of America, probably in the world problem. Name me a professional sports league and I can name owner after owner who is either a terrible owner, a terrible person, or some combination of both. Now, lucky for you, I've gotten together with the Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silver's Brain Trust, and I have reimagined sports franchise ownership in a way that we can finally hold owners accountable while forcing them to put the regular everyday fan not necessarily first, but a little bit higher than they put them. And I want to be clear, this is not the perfect plan. It's merely a step in the right direction, but I think it's pretty good. So let's get into it. Okay, for starters, there's too much security in sports ownership. You think the Supreme Court is bad? You're right. But imagine if Supreme Court justices could pass down their position to their kids. That's sports ownership. There's no real punishment for being a bad owner, and it also prevents new, hopefully more diverse faces from getting a chance to own a team. No more. Owners should be elected. They use public funds, so let's treat them like non-Supreme Court justice public officials. All right, so how does this work? Okay, so I had a little bit of extra time when I got done coming up with the Wheel of Unfortune to do some math, and according to my calculations, 7 years is the perfect amount of time to fix a broken franchise and show that you're headed in the right direction. You can get a couple of drafts under your belt, get those picks to a point where you can see whether or not you made the right choice, hire a coach, fire a coach, hire a new coach, re-sign that coach. You can give your fans a chance to get to know you. 7-year terms, that's the starting point. Got it? Incumbents who are reelected, just continue on with what you're doing. Whatever, congratulations. An incumbent who is defeated, you're forced to sell, no guarantee that you get back what you paid for it. That's entirely dependent on an outside appraiser who sets the price, and that pre-election price is what potential candidates have to show they can come up with in order to run for owner. Haven't increased the value of your team since you bought it? Too bad. This is also a great way to weed out the serious candidates from people like me who can't afford to own a team. That way, the rich win again. Congratulations. Speaking of the rich winning, who gets to vote? Non-corporate season ticket holders. Just a rich person with money to blow on the Sixers? Congratulations. You get to vote on the owner. I'm also capping the number of season ticket holders each team is allowed to have so that regular folks like you and me can afford to go to games. Now, the way I see it, smart owners would make season tickets affordable and lottery-based to keep the fan base happy and get some die-hard fans in the mix. Bad owners will use this season ticket holder cap to raise prices. Congratulations, Golden State Warriors. Rich tech bros who know nothing about the game will be picking your next owner. Venture capitalists are notorious for their eye for talent. Shout out to Theranos and WeWork. Now, speaking of the rich winning, can votes be bought? No. Instant loss of franchise and lifetime ban of ownership across any league. A voter who's been bought, lifetime ban from voting and going to games. You have to make the punishment hurt to make people not want to do it. Take note, commissioners. All right, so can ownership be passed down if the owner dies in the middle of their term? No. Special election. Proceeds from the sale can go to the heirs, So hopefully you die in the middle of a championship run when your franchise value is at its peak. The heir can also run for owner if they so choose. We call this the George H.W. Bush rule. So let's say your team owner is caught up in a scandal. Let the same voters who voted to elect them vote on whether or not to remove them. That's essentially what Sarver's claiming happened if you read his statement and how he was forced to face the boogeyman that is cancel culture. We're just making it an official process. I mean, how many times have you as a fan felt like you could do a better job than the owners? Or that you care more than the owners care? Just about every day for me. So this is our chance to prove it while also holding the owners accountable. And the owners should welcome this, because if they're awful, they can just say, hey, you voted for me and elections matter. It's the perfect balance of accountability while allowing them a pathway to avoid taking 100% responsibility for their actions. What could be better than that? In all seriousness, though, there needs to be a way to hold owners accountable for everything from racist and misogynistic scandals to just poor operation of the franchise. Too often, these people who are allowed to skate through life without facing real consequences due to their wealth also avoid accountability in the sports world simply because we don't even know them. An owner election would let us get to know the owners, put a time limit on the amount of damage they can do to a franchise, and incentivize them to care about more than just their bottom line. Do you have your own plan? Agree? Disagree? I don't know. Hit me up. BeyondTheArc843@gmail.com. This has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. And I will catch y'all next week.